Hello everyone, my name is Amanda Swan and I am the Vice President of Advocacy here at Santa Rosa Junior College, as well as a Region 3 Senator for the Statewide Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I very much want to thank Mr. Jonathan Lightman for coming today. Always an incredibly inspirational speaker and extremely difficult to follow. When I was asked to do this, I was honestly quite taken aback because this is an amazing opportunity for anyone, let alone a student. So first off, I would like to thank everyone involved for this opportunity. Assemblymember Noreen Evans is quite a remarkable woman. She is now in her third term as Assembly member, and she also before that served on the Santa Rosa City Council. And she's always been an advocate for student rights, women's rights, wine industry, and coastal conservation. And I think today the point of this meeting is to make sure that she continues to be an advocate for California community colleges, because we are the largest system of higher education in the entire world. And when you think about that, that kind of is a little staggering. Right now we're representing about 2.9 million students. And quite honestly, the thought of losing that to me is incredibly heartbreaking. And I've seen that happening here at this college, and I've been here, this is my 5th year here. I actually moved here from Idaho specifically to come to Santa Rosa Junior College. So seeing what's been happening to this campus over the last couple years has been, it's been quite hard. And I know those of you who have been here for, far longer than I have, it's got to be downright heartbreaking. So please, without any further ado, I would love to bring up Assemblymember Noreen Evans.
So much for that wonderful introduction and for the opportunity to talk to you today. And I'll apologize in advance and grab a bottle of water. I've been struggling with bronchitis for the last several weeks, and even though I feel better, my voice is not quite back 100%, so it tends to fade in and out every once in a while, but I'll do my best. First of all, I want to take up on the theme of advocacy. I am, if not your biggest advocate in the state capitol, at least one of many. I started out my career at Chabot Junior College back in the mid-'70s. And I was one of those students, and there are many of them on community colleges, that had to work their way through college through my entire 4 years of undergraduate and then my 3 years of law school. I was always one of those that was on the financial edge. And those students that we are constantly now worried about because of the increases in fees and the reduction in classes. So I was one of those kids. And I will never forget I think I had some of my best professors at Chabot Junior College out of 7 years of college. And I can remember particularly a history professor that just made history come alive for the very first time. And I started to understand how different people's quirks and personalities really influenced the course of history. And it really changed my entire approach. Oh, thank you. Changed my entire approach to education. For that experience, I'm one of the biggest community college advocates in the Capitol, but also my son spent 3 years here at the junior college, and now he is over at Sonoma State. And he was one of those kids that, had to find his own way in his own time. And SRJC was right there for him, and he had a great experience here. So just to kind of set that issue aside and that question, you can count on me for whatever you need in the Capitol. The other thing I want to do is, before I get to the PowerPoint presentation on the budget that I have, I want to just say something right out front. Don't ask me to defend this budget. I won't defend it. It's indefensible. What I will try to do, though, is give you an understanding through this PowerPoint presentation and through answering your questions how the dysfunctionality of the system, combined with this recession that's the worst since the 1920s, how those two factors combine to bring us to having to make these really, really tough choices that we had to make and that have impacted your campuses so directly and so negatively. So I won't defend it because, in my opinion, it's indefensible. It's not the way I would have approached it if I were queen of the state of California, but I'm not. I'm one of 120 legislators. But I will try to explain it and help you understand it and figure out how you can influence things for better results in the future. So if it's okay with you, we can go directly to the PowerPoint. Is there a way to maximize the screen? We might be able to see it better. Who's, oh.
Real big behind you.
Oh, is it? Oh, can I?
Yeah, the keyboard is on it.
Oh. Okay. Sorry, I have to get all set up. Handle the mechanics. This is my assistant, Ed. Okay. First of all, just by way of introduction, let me tell you, budgeting is the art of setting priorities. Just as in your school budget, your home budget, you've got to figure out what's the most important thing to you and spend your money accordingly. And the first few slides really kind of go through the top priorities that have been set in different ways, sometimes through voter-approved initiatives, sometimes just because these are values that Californians hold, that we spend our money on. Next. And when I talk about when I talk about the budget, what I'm talking about is the California State General Fund budget. There's a lot of other special funds that pay for different things, such as transportation. This is the general fund budget. This is the budget that the legislature and the governor and the voters have used to fund all of our state activities, other than those special funds. Next. So these are the things that we spend most of our money on, and you can see that almost, a little bit more than half that pie chart is devoted to education, K through 12 and higher education. If you look at the little slice that is attributable to corrections and rehabilitation, that's the largest slice of that is the fastest growing slice of the general fund budget. Go on. And in fact, the Health and Human Services has been slowly dwindling. I forgot there's a few sounds accompanying this. This will show you where the money comes from, what the top 10 counties are where the taxes are collected. That's in green, or the top 20. And then the top 20 counties for expenditures. Those are in red. And I won't make any comment on the politics of this. You can draw your own conclusions, but it's really interesting when you look at them side by side, where the money comes from and where it gets spent. Next slide. This will show you the sources of the taxes. So look at the personal income tax. It's almost half of what we use to fund our general fund. Can somebody tell me what's not on here? Property taxes. Property taxes are not on here. Since Proposition 13 was adopted back in 1978, the state does not use property taxes for its general fund. They're collected locally and they primarily stay locally, but they do not go to the general fund. And that's been very problematic over time. We could spend a whole hour on Prop 13, but we won't. Let's go to the next slide. This is a really interesting slide that I got from Paul Krugman. And it shows you on the left-hand side income inequality back in the 1920s and the early 1910s versus what the income inequality rates are like now. They're they're higher now than they were before. And this is important because as more and more wealth becomes accumulated in fewer and fewer hands, and as the state becomes more and more dependent on personal income taxes and sales taxes and consumption taxes, our revenues become more and more volatile. And we find more and more of these spikes in our general fund, which we've been having over the last few years, which makes it really hard to plan for how we're going to actually provide the services that Californians demand. Let's go on to the next one. We've also seen a number of corporate tax cuts since 1981, and this line will show you they went up, and now they've come way down in the last 20 years. We've had a lot of corporate tax cuts, which means, again, the state becomes more and more dependent upon consumption tax, personal income taxes, and sales taxes. Let's go to the next slide. So we've had very, very unstable years in the last decade. And you can see how many deficits we've had. We've had 7 deficits in 10 years. And if you were to combine all of the surpluses that we had, they do not meet the combined amount of the deficits. So that means we have, in the state of California, in our general fund, we are running a structural deficit. That's what that means. Our surpluses are less than our combined deficits. And this is causing huge problems, like this year, and I'll get to this in a little more detail later, but when the bottom dropped out of the economy, we simply could not afford to provide services at the level we've been providing them.